And we're live. It is Wednesday, the 7th day of January, the year of our Lord, 2026. It is 8 o'clock a.m. And as Noah Ephron would say, I don't mean to boast, but I was sitting in a hospital waiting room yesterday morning, accompanying a beloved family member to a medical procedure. And it was 6 in the morning, maybe 6:30, and everybody was sleepy and barely awake. And most people who were there for their medical procedures couldn't even have a cup of coffee with them. And so they were bleary eyed and grumpy. And the woman who was sitting next to us gets called because we got called in the order in which we showed up. And she shows up, stands up, stretches and turns around and says to me, clad as I was in my jacket, I just want to know if there's a dog shirt under there. And I was a little bit taken aback, I gotta say, because that was the last thing. I wasn't expecting her really to talk to me at all. But I just want to say to you all, the dog shirt revolution is coming for us all. The only question is whether you get run over by it or whether you join it. And that is why I was not, there was no show yesterday. Today, however, we are back. There is a show. And I want to say there is somebody who had a more interesting day than I did, and that is Holly Berkley Fletcher, because she magically turned into, it was like one of those puff, people turning into pumpkins or that sort of thing, except she turned into an on-the-ground investigative reporter, romping between rallies, hanging out with the January Sixers, because yesterday was, among other things, January 6th. And Holly went to the January 6th rally, the pro January 6th rally, to check it out and report from the scene. And I am just going to finish the monologue very briefly, Kate, and turn things over Holly
now
to tell you about the her experience with the January Sixers. Look, folks, the sun is shining. It really is. It's like the first gorgeous day we've had in a long time in Washington. The birds are chirping. It is going to be a great fucking day. And
watching Dog Shirt TV, a full revolution in morning television.
You are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a freaking revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features is that the dog shirt revolution is catching on, and it has made it to hospital waiting rooms all over Washington and the area. And if you are that woman who I saw yesterday, and who asked me if I was wearing a dog shirt and under that coat. And by the way, I wasn't wearing a dog shirt. I was wearing the sloth shirt. Today, in your honor,
she's so
I
disappointing.
am wearing one of the doggest of dog shirts. And another one of the revolutionary features is that sometimes our co-hosts turn into undercover insurrectionists and go and hang with the insurrectionist elite of Washington down at the Ellipse. And so all of that is just a 4-minute, Kate, long way of saying that we are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to get a report from the ground, from the belly of the insurrectionist beast, from Holly Berkley Fletcher. Holly, over to you, on the scene reporter.
Yeah, it was quite a new experience for me. I'm having lots of new experiences lately. But yeah, no, so I went down to the mall. Yesterday was the 5th anniversary of the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. orchestrated and inspired by our dear leader, who is now taking his chaos to other countries. But yesterday was the anniversary. So I went down to the mall. I saw a thing online, and there was a few different things planned, but I went to this one organized by a group I had never heard of. But it said nonviolent resistance. So I thought that sounded okay. And I went down there on the mall between 3rd and 4th Street, right in front of the Capitol. And there were not many people there. It was mainly, all the protests, by the way, are mainly boomers who are great. I love the boomers and their protest energy. And so we were milling around with our signs and such. I almost went to this, there was some guys with an American flag over across the street. And I almost went to them, and I'm glad I didn't, because these people told me they had talked to those people, and those people were actually January 6th, pro January 6th. So I was like, oh, lovely. I'm going to stay on this side of the street. Anyway, as I was talking to my fellow ralliers, anti-January 6th ralliers, there was a younger man who said he had seen on TikTok that the Proud Boys and other people who were at the actual January 6th were rallying at the Ellipse as they did on the actual January 6th. And they were planning to retrace their steps to the Capitol to memorialize the march and remember their dear Ashley Babbitt and all of the suffering and imprisonment that those among them had suffered. So I texted Ben and a few other friends, and I put on Blue Sky that this guy told me this, and Ben, very journalist-like, asked me if I had verified this, and I was like, well, of course not. I'm just standing out here with some dude. And then I was like, I'm going to go.
I'm such an assignment editor, live or die as an assignment editor. First question to a non-journalist who says something like this, because she's posting about it on Blue Sky, is, did you quality control your information?
Yeah, I did. I did say on Blue Sky that I said that a guy had told me this, and then I added that there in a later tweet that I had not verified it. But then I decided there's no reason why I can't verify it, because I drove down to the mall. I got a good parking spot. There was no problem parking yesterday. And so I ran back to my car. I hopped in my car and I drove down to the Ellipse. And sure enough, there was what looked like a large crowd, probably, I don't know, I'm not good at numbers, but looked like a couple hundred people, at least 100 people there. And then I found a parking spot, just boom, right on Constitution. So I was like, this is like, I'm going to get out and go check this out. And so I did, and walked over there. It turned out like probably half the crowd was journalists. But sure enough, there was evidently, an evidently pro January 6th crowd down there. So I decided to get closer and mill around. I was you can tell I'm not a real journalist, because the whole time I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, I hope if someone gets me on camera, they're going to think I'm a January 6er or something. Like, I didn't want anyone ever thinking that I was not January 6th. And I had left my sign in the car, my anti-sign. So I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be mistaken for one of these psychopaths. But I was like, you got to get the story, Holly, got to get the story. So I went in. There was someone who appeared to be, and I later verified, was Enrique Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys. And let me tell you, I'm sick of this little shit.
Did you say hi to him?
I didn't, because he was busy holding court. He was giving a speech of some kind.
But I have a question, Holly. Important question. Is he short?
Oh yeah, he's short. But this is like the second run-in I've had with Enrique Tarrio.
I just want it out there. He's short.
He is, which is not a problem.
And that means he's not tall, right? So.
He's short, but more importantly, he's a shit. So he literally is a little shit.
Yeah. I just think when I say this as a short person, that when short people are ruled by their sense of inadequacy, we should always remark on the fact that, wow, he's short. Um, I don't believe in height shaming people but like if your whole life is defined by feeling inadequate because you're short,
And also
um,
when your whole life is defined by projecting this macho image.
exactly right. Your whole existence is. And look, I am barely taller than Enrique Tarrio. I mean,
No, you are well taller than him, actually.
I'm a little guy.
No, no.
I'm my I'm stocky, but I'm not a tall person.
This guy is
And
short, well shorter than you.
well, and I just think, when you're like, you know, when you have to become a violent fascist to compensate for being a short person, it is really important to emphasize the shortness. So anyway, Enrique Tarrio, short guy. Holly, you were
Speaking
saying.
of short guys, our lovely Mike Feinberg. Sorry, this is
Yeah,
Ben's
but
fault,
Mike
Mike.
Mike is an example. All right, like Mike is an example like me of somebody who is short, but it does not define his existence, and he has not become a violent fascist in order to compensate for
No,
being short.
Mike has compensated, both of you have compensated by growing your brains as large as a planet and shoving as much knowledge as you can in there, and that's a perfectly fine way of compensating. But I have new breaking news from the Gen Zs, and courtesy of my daughter, and that is that worrying about height, and especially men's height, is incredibly archaic, patriarchal, and so out. It's
Well,
like so out
I'm
of
just
date.
saying we don't do it except when somebody is so consumed by it that they become a violent fascist by way of
Yeah.
compensating.
Okay.
And
Anyway,
then
back
we
to my
mention it
story.
constantly. Anyway,
I'm going to
back
get
to
back to
you,
my story
Holly.
because it's getting out of control. But just a brief reminder that this is my second run-in in a year with dear Enrique Tarrio,
Who's
because
short.
who's short, because you may recall that last year at the principal's first summit, he and his goons did a bomb threat and like did a whole storming thing to
Right,
try to
right.
intimidate Michael Fanone, who I do not think can be intimidated, actually.
And who's not
Um,
short.
and who is not short and who is quite buff, and and angry, and I would never mess with Michael Fanone personally. Anyway, so I'm tired of this little shit, and he is a little shit. Both he's little and he's a shit. And so I'm tired of him. Anyway, he is so small that I could barely see him as he was speaking in the crowd. And so I was kind of on the outside, couldn't really tell what he was saying. So anyway, I have my video going, and I'm standing next to this guy, and I'm feeling okay. I'm out of my element, well out of my element, and not comfortable at all, but I'm feeling okay. So I decide I'm going to start talking to this guy who's standing next to me. And so I asked him, was he on January 6th? Oh, yes, he was on January 6th. Asked him if he was charged. He very proudly told me he was the first case that went to trial. I said, oh, so you were in the Capitol? And he was like, no, wasn't in the Capitol. I was like, well, how were you charged? I thought, most of the people charged were actually inside. What were you charged with? So he told me his various charges. I asked his name. And then I asked it again. His name is Guy Reffitt, who is the first, who, if it were Ben, he would have known exactly who this guy was, or
I
Mike.
do know exactly who Guy Reffitt is, because Guy Reffitt is one of the people whom we featured in our series, The Aftermath.
Which I listened to, but I did not. My command of detail
because
is
you
not.
didn't expect yourself to be confronted by face
I
to
did
face
not.
with an actual insurrectionist who you'd be able to say, wow, I remember from the Aftermath that Guy Reffitt got 87 months in prison and is
Yeah.
only a free man today because of a pardon from Donald Trump. And you talked to him yesterday. Should we watch the video of your conversation with him?
Yeah, best to watch the video and not to hear me go drone on.
All right, here it
Then I'll
goes.
have further comment.
I'd be mad until I see something.
Can you guys hear this okay?
In prison for life. I will be mad. Yes, it is. Yeah, I'll be mad.
That we can't have brutality on anything. A lot of these people are trying to make these Sixers look bad when in reality they were just saying, America, this is our country. Y'all stole the election.
Can I say it took all my strength not to just scream at all of these people? This is Tario in this scrum here.
4th of July until something gets continue sticking and we'll continue to fight. Because that's what we do. A lot of the people that came out of there that do it. And I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Can I ask you, are you guys planning to go down to the Capitol today?
Yeah.
After this?
1:10 p.m.
1:10 p.m. Which route are you going to go down?
Constitution down to the county council.
Were you there on January 6th 5 years ago? Sure. You were there? You weren't charged with any crimes, were you?
The very first trial, I go before the judge.
Are you? What's your name?
Guy Reffitt.
Guy
Reffitt.
Reffitt. Okay. And so, did you spend time in jail?
All of it. 4 years.
Really? And so you were pardoned. Okay. What have you been doing since then?
Rebuilding my life.
Where do you live?
Right now, I'm staying in Houston.
Okay. Is that where you lived before?
No. They took all that.
Okay. What did you do before?
Work-wise?
Yeah.
I was an oil man. I traveled 23 countries and worked for the largest oil companies in the world. Great oil companies, Saudi Aramco. I worked with the Vietnamese.
Yeah, so he was clearly a forgotten man with a barely scraping by, and that's why he had to follow Donald Trump, right?
Telecommunications.
Okay.
I'm staying in the country this time. A lot of travel. Let's just stay here.
And what made you come on January 6th?
You know, there's a lot of reasons. It's not just one. COVID kind of set everybody in a spot where they were getting pushed around too much by our government. And I came because of the rally. I came to see Trump. I do support him. Obviously, he's a good man, or I wouldn't be free.
Obviously.
Trying to take us down and trying to destroy this country, and Trump stepped up, and he's fighting back. And I'm here to fight with him every day.
When you came 5 years ago, what did you expect?
Well, I didn't expect that. I'll tell you that.
That's a lie. Okay, I'll talk about
to
that.
go into the Capitol.
I didn't go in the Capitol.
You didn't go in the Capitol.
I didn't go in that building until I got pardoned. Next month after that, I went in for a tour.
So what were the charges against you?
I had 5 charges: two civil disorders, 2 obstruction charges, and 1 trespassing.
But you didn't go in the Capitol. So what was the evidence against you? Where were you arrested?
It's all trumped up evidence. It's all trumped up.
Where were you arrested? Later? Okay. So I assume there was like some video or something?
My son testified against me in trial.
Your son testified. Okay.
He got a hold of the FBI and told him that I was coming to January 6th. And
The
then
evil FBI.
he said something. I guess he said something big was going to happen. Clearly, he's more clairvoyant than I am. I had no idea what that was.
What a liar.
So where were you on January 6th, like specifically? You say you didn't go in the Capitol.
All my life, and I'm 53 years old, I've been told if you have a grievance with your government, take these steps to the Capitol, and that's exactly what I was saying.
Did you see people? Did you see violence?
No violence.
What was your name again?
Guy Reffitt.
Reffitt?
Reffitt.
Is that Enrique Ontario?
Yes, that is.
Okay. Are there other Proud Boys here?
Yes, there are.
How you doing?
Good.
I was listening.
Are there other groups here that you know of?
You'll keep your prescription.
They're all here today, and they're going to march. You're planning to march at 1:10. down
Yeah,
the
we'll
Constitution.
once annual Constitution, and we'll lay flowers in memorial for those who lost.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
It's a memorial. It's not a protest.
Okay.
Who are you with?
I'm just curious.
You're just curious? A curious citizen?
There
as
she
a-
is.
So here we are.
Holly Berkley Fletcher, curious citizen,
Actually, it was not well done.
intrepid
So
reporter
obviously,
on the streets.
and I rate my reporting skills low. I mean, I'll cut myself a break because I did not I was not expecting to conduct this assignment. If I had known I was going to end up at that rally, maybe speaking to Guy Ruffett, I would have brushed up on the facts of it, and I would have asked him some more probing questions, like why did he bring an AR-15 to Washington, D.C., and why did he bring a loaded pistol to the Capitol, and why was he wearing body armor at the Capitol, and why did he have zip ties on him? And also,
You know, in our internal conversations about the aftermath, we always called him Zip Tie Guy.
yeah. So, and
'cause
he actually, I read Roger Parloff's article when I got home, which is the best article I could find on the details of the case, of course, on Lawfare.
You know, just to be clear, for those who are interested in these cases, there is no coverage of them like the coverage that Roger did for Lawfare,
I
kind
can
of
attest
wall
to that.
wall.
Having gone down, having done some internet research last night, I can attest to that. I wanted an article that, I looked at the indictments, but the indictments were pretty spare in terms of the evidence. And then I looked at the conviction, and that was also, I wanted something detailing the evidence against him. So anyway, he just obviously lied to my face, which of course all these people are liars.
And his son is a hero, by the way. His son.
And by the way, he threatened his son's life and his daughter's life.
That's the obstruction charge.
He threatened their lives, actually.
And for the record, it's really been underreported in how many of these cases nationwide good, patriotic family members, neighbors, and coworkers recognized the horror of that day and were willing to assist in the investigations and step up and make investigators aware of people that otherwise may have escaped their notice.
Yeah.
And also there was obviously with all these cases, including his, there was copious video evidence, including video that he took. He had a camera on his hat.
Yeah,
that
so
took 360 video.
This is a very important point. I don't want to disrupt future FBI investigations, but I will say the number of January 6ers who were hoisted on the petard of their own video evidence and social media is astonishing. So when you conduct an insurrection, when you commit crimes, generally a good idea not to document them with your own social media. Just best practices.
So that's actually shockingly common in all crimes.
Yeah, although I think January 6th took it to a different level.
I cannot tell you the number of people who post pictures to social media of themselves with stolen property. That is readily identifiable. A ridiculous number of cases have been broken thanks to the stupidity of the offenders. But like on that point, I think we need to really hammer something home. And I know I'm joining late. So if this is already covered, I apologize. But like, it's very easy because this was so ham-fisted and so many were hoisted by their own petard to view these people in a sort of cartoonish manner. And
Guy Ruffett is a serious menace.
These people are fucking scumbag traitors. Like I don't want anyone to overlook that because of the comical aspect, These are people who, for the first time in our nation's nearly 250-year history, tried to leverage violence to overturn the democratic processes and stop the certification of an election. And,
Well, it wasn't the first time, but it is the first time in modern history.
Yeah,
right?
like I think it
1876 was ugly too.
It was an event without parallel, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that the sitting president orchestrated it and it was part of a much larger plot throughout the government. Yeah,
and look, there were over 100 law enforcement officers, and obviously this is something I take personally, having been one, who were assaulted that day.
Right.
4 committed suicide. 1 died from an extreme reaction to chemical agents. Countless others have had trauma-related psychological problems since then. Like, this is one of the most pernicious things, if not the most pernicious thing, that a president of the United States has ever rallied behind. And I'm going to sound extreme, but like, look, I was a supervisor in the Washington field office when this happened and devoted months of my life and hours upon hours to bringing these people to justice. And as harsh as this sounds, like, a lot of these people deserve to hang. They didn't deserve to be pardoned. What they did is unforgivable in the sort of country we were founded as and are continually trying to perfect. And, you know, I don't know if you guys have covered it, but the White House's postings from yesterday,
I was going to get to
that they did
Horrific.
is
Outrageous.
one of the most evil things I have ever seen an organ of government do. Like,
yeah, so I am going to alert people to this, but I'm not going to. So
I'm not publicizing it.
Yeah, so I want people to be aware of the fact that it was done, but I actually don't want to be. I don't want to. I don't want to publicize. So this is a White House press release issued yesterday, January 6th, a date that will live in infamy, and it is a series of lies about the.
Honestly, I want to throw up.
And so I'm not. I think I'm just so that we're not in the business of sharing lies. I will alert you to the fact that the White House posted a full page spread of lies yesterday. But I don't really want to discuss the substance of them.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is horrific. What happened and the way it's being treated now. And I think there's 2 reckonings that have not happened. The first is the reckoning with the event itself. And the second is the reckoning, and I don't want to wade into too controversial or ad hominem attacks here, but like, the United States government and the Department of Justice had 4 years to figure out what to do about the domestic terrorism problem. You know, after 9/11, there was a real reckoning with structural failures that had not allowed that attack to happen. I think that's unfair, but made it easier for the perpetrators to do what they did.
Right.
And the United States government, mainly the Department of Justice, chose to treat January 6th, 2021 as the end of something instead of the beginning.
Yeah.
And as a result, there was no hard look at domestic terrorism authorities or policies, and no questioning of what did we need to do different going forward. And like, this can and will happen again because we haven't figured out how to deal with it. I mean, I oversaw the domestic terrorism program for a number of years in a part of a state that had a particularly active right-wing militia movement. And there was no difference between how those cases were worked pre-January 6th, 2021, and how they were worked after. There was no change in authorities. There was no change in investigative protocols. There was no change in whether we viewed them as isolated events or through a sort of networked analysis. Like, the bad guys triumphed on January 6th, but the good guys failed in the weeks afterwards.
Well, I think they did a much better job on the lower level going after these people than, I mean, of course, the big failure was not trying the kingpin at the beginning. And I just think
they did try. I mean, like, I think we don't give enough credit.
I think they assumed they had all the time in the world. And honestly, I assumed, I couldn't imagine that he would ever be allowed to run again. And I thought they had all the time in the world. And so I sort of bought the argument that was out there. I don't know if it was correct or not, but the argument that was out there was that, you know, when you have a massive conspiracy like this, you start at the lowest levels and you work your way up.
That is, and I don't want to get overly harsh, or that is a canard that prosecutors who have never done the early steps of an investigation themselves, who come in after large parts of it are done, believe. Like, there are absolutely times it makes more sense to go for a decapitation strike when investigating an enterprise than it does to go after all the lower level people first. And we saw this in the post 9/11 context. We didn't slowly work our way up the ranks of Al-Qaeda. That's a myth. We went after people that we could easily get to gain intelligence.
Yeah.
But then we leveraged that intelligence to go after the highest ranking people we possibly could. It used to
but the approach to Al-Qaeda was never simply or even chiefly a law enforcement matter.
Yeah,
I think the problem that the FBI and the Justice Department faced in January 6th, after January 6th, as you know, is that the volume of material was simply immense. The number of suspects had no analog. And I think there was a question that was fundamentally political in character, which is, do you want to treat it like an extraordinary matter? Do you want to be able to say, hey, we treated this like a criminal case like any other. We didn't disfavor Donald Trump. We didn't favor him. Or do you want to say this was an extraordinary event that required an extraordinary response in which and I think, I think there was never from the leadership of the FBI, particularly the FBI, actually, but also from the Justice Department, there was a very, very strong desire to say, we're handling this in the regular order. And
I mean, no offense to the Attorney General or the director of the FBI, that was fucking stupid. And events,
well, in hindsight, it was really,
I mean, like, look,
but even Jack Smith was doing it, 2 weeks ago, right? Like, we treated Donald Trump no worse or no better than any other criminal defendant, right? I mean, that is the line that
we're talking about different things. You can treat Donald Trump no worse or no better than any other defendant and still recognize that from the beginning he was the main conspirator, and you needed to go after the top levels of the conspiracy.
Well, and also to insulate our process.
The major investigation into the conspiracy that Donald Trump, Giuliani, Epstein, Eastman, and later Clark was headed wasn't opened until over a year later. Like,
right? I mean,
can I just say the other
Yep.
argument at the time, that as a non-legal expert by any means, that as just a citizen, the other argument I heard that made sense to me was that, this is an extraordinary situation, unprecedented in American history, where we're investigating an American president, and we better have all our ducks in a line. We better have this nailed down like completely. So we're going to go carefully. And again, assumed, and which I understand, that they had all the time in the world because this guy was politically dead in the water. I certainly believe that.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Nobody with any knowledge of 20th century history and authoritarian mass movements would look at January 6th and say this is the end. I mean, you can't. This was the beer hall putsch.
Right.
I don't
No,
know.
I agree with that. To the extent that the investigation was predicated on the idea that the Trump era was over.
That's
that
what
was
I
a
thought,
very
and I'm a historian,
foolish-
so
That
Yeah.
was a very foolish and very historically unaware way to think about it.
but not historically underwear. An American, I'm a historian. I know history very well, and I appreciate the lessons of history as a matter of profession. But I thought, and again, there's a lot of history to back this up. I did think America was, and I still think that America is different in significant ways than 1930s Germany. And I could not imagine I knew the American people were not the brightest and not the most wise, people, but I could not imagine in any world that he could be reelected as president of the United States. Like, I just could not imagine it.
But that's where I think, like, I don't know who to blame for this, whether it's the educational system, but like, or civic culture. I don't know, but
Decadence.
I'm unaware of any country, empire, or republic in history that has not fallen prey at some point to the authoritarian strongman tradition. People forget the Weimar Constitution was one of the most well thought out architectures of democracy in modern history, and it collapsed.
Well, it didn't have 250 years behind it, though. And they were in a hyperinflation.
Like,
See, we weren't even in. We're even in economic bad times. That's the crazy thing about it.
There is an immense amount of unjustified hubris in the American imagination.
I believe that now.
America is exceptional. I do believe in American exceptionalism.
I
do believe in the last best hope trope, but
Not for Denmark, though.
What's that?
We're not the last best hope for Denmark.
No, but like there has
Well, we're not anymore for anybody. I don't think. I think it's over.
But you could believe in American exceptionalism and still recognize that America has a massive vulnerability in that our geographic isolation has always made us think that we are immune to history. There has always been a belief that we will somehow avoid the pitfalls that befall other countries. And like the island trope of America does protect us to a large extent from external threats. But we're not immune to the very human temptations that have ruined other nations. And the fact that like the leadership of the United States could not see this in the months after January 6th is infuriating. Christopher.
Okay, so Mike, I wanna push you on. A lot of people make the criticism that we didn't act with dispatch on January 6th.
Yeah.
A lot of people, not a lot of people who have investigative experience make the criticism. And Merrick's response to it, which he has made in a number of speeches and is, first of all, we started at the bottom, we worked our way
Yeah.
up, we had a huge number of cases. The classified documents case proceeded in the background in an expeditious fashion. And the moment there was, and by the way, the investigation of Trump on January 6th was open a number of months in. There was a lot of activity in the background that was not public. And oh, by the way, the moment in, I believe, 2022 that investigation reached critical mass and he declared for president, Garland was obliged to invoke the special counsel law or reg and did so. So tell me what this story looks like if we had been operating in the world that you're describing. How is the story different? How is the investigation different from the one that played out?
Yeah, so let me begin with a partial defense and partial criticism of Merrick Garland. I have nothing but respect for him.
He's a wonderful person.
Yeah,
He's
like,
a wonderful man and a very smart and wise
I've never even been in
person.
the same room as him. So like I have no personal.
He and I have been friends for 30 years.
So like I have no personal knowledge in this. I have the utmost respect for what he was trying to do.
I'm not trying to sound defensive of him. I'm genuinely interested in the question of what is the realistic lots of people are throwing mud about it, but what is the realistic alternative investigative scenario?
So when I was talking about how DOJ failed, I was talking to a certain extent about insisting on going after the lowest level offenders first. I think they could have been done simultaneously. After 9/11, the FBI reassigned a lot of people who had never worked international terrorism to squads that focused now on Middle East originating and Philippine originating groups that were involved in largely Sunni extremist violence. There was not that scale of a shift after January 6th. We existing CT squads did work more domestic terrorism, and big cities created DT squads. But in general, there was no massive shift of resources to getting ahead of the problem. A lot of people found themselves working January 6th cases, but that was largely looking at what happened in the past. There was not the effort to shift personnel to create tripwires and to massively cultivate sources in some of these organizations. And the irony is that we have many more DT targets or potential subjects in the United States than we ever did Al-Qaeda operatives. Like, there was fertile ground for us to exploit their weaknesses, very similar to what we did to the KKK in the 50s and 60s, where by a certain point of Hoover's tenure, 1 out of 3 KKK members was actually an FBI informant. I mean, that's the actual statistic. We could have done that with the militia movements and with the far right organizations and far left organizations that were intent on using violence to undermine our constitutional structure. Point to me, after 9/11, there were immense amounts of RICO investigations into terrorist organizations where we tried to take them down on an enterprise level. We indicted a little under a dozen Oath Keepers and a little under a dozen Proud Boys. And that's something no pun intended, to be very proud of. But why weren't we doing that with each and every militia group that was stockpiling weapons and explosives?
Okay,
Why,
but if
well,
all right,
there's
so
another part, because
okay,
that's
go ahead.
investigative strategies. We also, there was an unwillingness, and this is where I'm going to get myself in trouble with a lot of people who have liked me since I became public with my criticisms of government, but like, we are so afraid in the domestic terrorism context of trampling on First Amendment sensitivities that we always err on the side of not opening investigations. And I don't know whether swinging the pendulum the other direction is the right call, but we need to at least discuss it.
I agree with that entirely.
And we never did. And as a result, like, it is easier for me to open, it's just a matter of fact, it would have been easier for me to open a violent crime case, an international terrorism case, a counterintelligence case. I could more easily get a FISA on an espionage subject than I could open a DT investigation. Like that's not, that shouldn't be right.
All right, so one name, I agree with all that.
Yeah.
But one thing that does not implicate is Donald Trump's ability to get reelected, because everything you've just said is about that sub level of violent white people and their Enrique Tarrio hangers-on. It's not about whether Donald Trump would have skated by, become popular again, and then declared for president in 2022, and the rest is history.
I mean, I think...
So what's the mechanism by which this reaches Trump earlier?
You don't just have CR-15 in Washington, in the Washington field office, which has now been disbanded. They should not be the only ones working a capital conspiracy case against the former inhabitants of the executive branch. This should have been a multiple squad effort. If we were treating this like a major terrorist attack, which I really do believe it was, we would have had a squad devoted to every single subject of Arctic frost. Because, like, investigations are slower than people realize. Shows like 24 have created in the popular imagination that, like, these things, like, you issue a search warrant, you're waiting 30 days before you get material back. Like, this is slow. But the more people you throw on it, the more you can mitigate that pace. There's only, interviewing witnesses takes time. Reviewing financial records takes time. Analyzing tolls takes time. The more people you have on it, the quicker it goes. And if we had had a squad dedicated to John Eastman, and a squad dedicated to Donald Trump, and a squad dedicated to Boris Epstein, it would have gone a lot quicker than just having one squad look at all of them. And we didn't do that.
I just wanted to finish my story while we...
Kate's point that it would have looked like political retribution. Too bad. To quote the eminent Christopher Wray, you do the right thing for the right way. You do the right thing the right way for the right reasons.
But Christopher Wray would have been the first person to man the barricades to prevent exactly what you're describing.
I know. And I'm pointing out the hypocrisy.
He would have been cowering in fear.
Pointing out his hypocrisy. Like, the fact that it looks like political retribution should not stop you from doing what is the right thing.
Well, and you can't really worry. You can't help that, and you can't worry about that. I have to finish my story if I can.
Sorry.
I understand Mike's passion about this, because I also feel very passionate with less experience with this, so I understand that. But I do want to finish my story. So I left the Proud Boys rally and I headed back down because they were obviously going to march that way. So I was concerned and interested to see if there, if they were going to intersect with my group of protesters. And then I noticed on my way that there was actually another anti-Proud Boy rally along Pennsylvania Avenue that was much more raucous. They had bullhorns and so on and so forth. And but I didn't know who they were, so I went back over to my people, and I asked, I said, there's another rally over there, and they said, oh yeah, that's the Flare people, which I had heard of Flare, and I had sort of purposely avoided them, and now I understand why that's a good idea.
Who is Flare, for those
Flare
who don't
is
know?
It's pretty crazy lefty radical protest group. They do a lot of anti-Trump protests, but I wouldn't. Anyway, let me tell you the rest of this and you'll understand. So I asked there's a couple of the people with me were like, yeah, I went over there, but I left because they were harassing the police officers, and like taunting them about like, oh, you're protecting the people that beat you up on January 6th, and like harassing the police officers. And then she said what really caused her to leave then was they started chanting, from the river to the sea, which is like a red line for me. And should be a red line.
A bit of a
non sequitur.
Exactly. January 6th.
Non sequitur.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I was like, well, I'm going to stay with my folks. So, but then when the Proud Boys, they did get to our end of the mall. And so then I walked kind of at a bit of a distance, but I walked kind of alongside them. And at that point, the Flare people were just like swarming them as well, and still taunting the police officers, which made me really mad. And a couple of my group were basically telling them to shut up. And so then they, but the police, there was a large police presence of all different jurisdictions, keeping the two groups apart. And the J6ers went to a certain area and did their little, tried to do their little whatever service or whatever they were doing. The Flare people they were taunting them too. And they had some good signs and, taunting them, saying, you should be in prison, et cetera, which I totally agree with. But then they kept taunting the police officers. So then at that point I was like, this is just crazy. And I don't think, none of this is really, it was just an ugly scene. And so I left, and I saw later online, someone sent me a video that apparently it did come, there were blows between some of the Flare people and some of the January 6th people, although it was kept at a minimum. But the whole thing just made me so sad because, and then to me, the coup de grace that just kind of sent me over the edge irrationally. I mean, I was already just like, the whole thing made me so angry. The fact that these criminals would be out literally parading around the streets of Washington with zero shame, zero restraint, just with pride, that guy would talk to me on video with pride, in front of the White House, this man that like freed them. So there's a federal building kind of near that end of the mall. I can't remember which department it is. And there was one of those massive Trump's face banners on it.
Oh, I think that's the Department of Agriculture.
Anyway, no, the agriculture's on the other end. It was on the, it was near Union Station.
Isn't it Labor?
Yeah, it's Labor.
Yeah. Anyway, it had a Teddy Roosevelt banner and then it had a Trump banner.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I may have projected horns, cat ears on the one on the Department of Agriculture.
And he's glowering down. His presidential portrait looks like his mugshot, and it was just like too much for me. And I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. So I went home and was sad. But I tell you what, to me the word, and maybe it's especially triggering. I mean, I think there's something in human nature that just so stands up and like can't take the gaslighting, just the insistence on reality not being reality. But for me, I think it's especially triggering if you come from a high control religious background where there's a line that is perpetuated at all times. And at any point, if your reason or experience or emotions, cross that line, you're basically, your reality is denied. And it is incredibly, it's just psychological torture, in my opinion. So all of this, and the fact that a lot of those same people, for me, that I grew up with, are also insisting on this like complete fable of a story, is just like beyond what I can tolerate sometimes. And I just felt sick to my stomach, and went home quite dismayed. So no pep talk from Holly today.
Richard, you have a pep talk.
I have a pep talk. So changing the subject, lightening up a little bit, I have some Wagner and Bach recommendations that I'd like to make, especially since Mike is on and I thought he'd be interested. So, first for Wagner, two productions that have been of The Ring that have been released on video recently. One is from the Deutsche Oper, and they're both from Berlin. One is from the Deutsche Oper in Berlin. It is a production of The Ring by the Norwegian director Stefan Herheim, and it is an amazing production.
Wow.
It is one of the things that's fascinating about it is that Herheim incorporates a lot of the reception history of The Ring into the staging itself. And it's really sort of a meta production about it. It is really fascinating, very well sung, and well conducted. The other production, I'm not as crazy about the production, but the music making and especially the conducting is a Ring from the Staatsoper Unter der Linden, the other major opera house in Berlin. The director is Dmitry Chernyakov, but the real star of it is the conductor Christian Thielemann, whose command of the score is just astonishing. It's really one of the best sounding and best performed rings that I've ever heard on record. So those are my two Wagner recommendations, and then I have a couple of two Bach recommendations on Harmonia Mundi. On the Harmonia Mundi label, the French conductor and early music specialist Raphael Pichon has recorded the St. Matthew Passion, and last year a fantastic recording of the Mass in B minor.
Which is maybe my single favorite piece of music in history.
Well, this is just an amazing recording. I've been listening to it lately, and again, I can recommend it highly. Ben, I would be very interested in your, if you were to hear it, your opinion of the horn in the natural horn that they use in the Tu Solus Sanctus, which I'm sure, which must be a bear for a natural horn player. But
yeah, really I actually don't know how anybody used to or still plays those without a valved horn. They were written for naturhorns, and they're. The only answer I can think of is that it must be typically played out of tune.
Yeah.
This
is not out of tune.
you listen to them well played, and they're astonishingly good.
Yeah.
And I don't actually understand how that works. You can't, the valved horn is an amazing. And trumpet actually is an amazing invention of the 19th century, and I don't really understand how good music was played before that. But yeah, it's for those who don't know the technology of brass instruments. Richard's point is a profound one. Well, thank you for that, Richard. Text me the these things with links
Will
so
do.
that I can include them in today's show notes.
Great, will do.
Folks, we got a wrap. We are going to be back tomorrow, and as the schedule reflects, we have a guest tomorrow. Holly, who is our guest tomorrow? In keeping with our calendar where we have our schedule.
Oh, some of you may know our friend Amanda Carpenter, formerly of The Bulwark, and formerly of CNN, and formerly even further back of Ted Cruz's office, bless her heart. But now she's with Protect Democracy, and so she's going to come on, and maybe she'll even give her side of my back injury story because she was present at that horrific event.
Yeah, that's right. She is responsible for your back injury, and we're gonna make her answer for it.
No, it is not her fault, but she is the reason why Kevin could be assured that I was indeed in terrible pain, because I would never mortify myself to that extent in front of someone as refined and lovely as Amanda Carpenter.
That will be tomorrow at 8:00. Reminder that on Sunday at 6 p.m. Is round 2 of the Wittes v. Stephen Marsh knockdown drag-out boxing match over his book, The Next Civil War. No, I'm kidding. We're going to have a great discussion. You should all read and it looks like my lunch with Tyler McBrien is showing up in the Dog Shirt TV calendar. So y'all are welcome to join Tyler and me for lunch. Folks, we're going to be back tomorrow. It's going to be Amanda Carpenter. It's going to be fun. Holly's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Amanda Carpenter's going to be there. You're going to be there. It's going to be a blast. See you then.